Greetings, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so glad you're here. Thanks for tuning in. Tonight, we'll finish our reading of A Man of the People. As you can see, politics is a dirty game. And if you're not prepared to do what it takes to win, you might be better served finding other endeavors. When we last left, Chief Nanga had attempted to bribe Odili to get him out of politics, but Odili vehemently denied the request. Chapter 12. A madman may sometimes speak a true word, said my father, but you watch him. He will soon add something to it that will tell you his mind is still spoiled. My son, you have again shown yourself true. When you came home with a car, I thought to myself, good, some sense is entering his belly at last. But I have not, but I should have known. So you really want to fight Chief Nanga? My son, why don't you fall where your pieces could be gathered? If the money he was offering was too small, why did you not say so? Why did you not ask for 3 or 400? But then your name would not be Odili if you did that. No, you have to insult the man who came to you as a friend. And let me ask you something. Do you think that he will return tomorrow to beg you again with 250 pounds? No, my son, you have lost the sky and you have lost the ground. Why do you worry yourself and get lean over a loss that is mine and not yours at all? You are in POP. I am in CPC. You have to listen to my irritating voice until the day comes when you stop answering Odili Samalu, or else until you look for me and don't see me anymore. This softened me a lot. I am always sentimental when it comes to people not being seen when they are looked for. I said nothing immediately, but when I did, it was in a more conciliatory tone. So your party gives ministers authorities to take bribes, eh? What? He said, waking up. I hadn't been looking at him, and so he didn't notice that he had dropped off. And so I didn't notice that he had dropped off. Chief Nanga said that 10%, the 10% he receives on contracts is for your party. Is that true? If Alligator comes out of the water one morning and tells you that Crocodile is sick, can you doubt his story? I see. This time, I watched him drop off almost immediately and smiled in spite of myself. The next day, Max and our campaign team arrived from Bori. There were a dozen other people with him, only two of whom I knew already: Eunice, his fiance, and the trade unionist, Joe. They had a car, a minibus, and two brand new Land Rovers with loudspeakers fitted on the roof. Seeing them so confident and so well equipped was for me the most morale boosting event of the past so many weeks. I envied Max, his beautiful, dedicated girl. Some people are simply lucky. I wished I could bring Edna here to see them. You didn't tell me you were coming today, I said to Max and not to the others. Didn't you get my telegram? No. I sent you a telegram on Monday. Monday of this week? Oh well, today is only Thursday and it should get here on Saturday. DV, said Max. Everyone laughed as I led them to my father's outbuilding. He had on seeing them quickly put on his Browning singlet and was now shaking hands with everyone with as much as enthusiasm as if he had been our patron. My young brothers and sisters were all over the place, some making faces at their image on the shining car bodies. The cars must have been washed at the ferry, I thought. It was typical of Max to want to come in clean and spotless. 2 or 3 of my father's wives came to the door of the inner compound and called out greetings to the visitors. Then Mama, the senior wife, came out hurriedly, clutching a telegram. It came this morning while you were out. I just remembered it, she said to me. I told Edmund to remind me as soon as you returned, but the foolish boy. Everyone laughed again, and my father, catching the hilarity, terminated the rebuke he had begun to deliver to those who can't read but love to handle other people's letters. We must withdraw our earlier statements, said Max, and give 3 hearty cheers to the Ministry of Posts and Telegraphs. Hip, hip, hooray! Hip, hip, hooray! Hip, hip, hooray! For they are jolly good fellows, for they are jolly good fellows, for they are jolly good fellows. And so say all of us, and so say all of us, hurrah, and so say all of us, hurrah, and so say all of us, hurrah. For they are jolly good fellows, for they are jolly good fellows, for they are jolly good fellows. And so say all of us. The singing and the laughter and the sight of so many cars brought in neighbors and passerbyers until we had a small crowd. Why don't we launch our campaign here and now? Asked Max with glazed, intoxicated looking eyes. Why not indeed, said Eunice. Not here, I said firmly. My father is local chairman of the POP and we shouldn't embarrass him. In any case, people don't launch campaigns just like that on the spur of the moment. What is the boy talking? My father asked. What is my being POP got to do with it? I believe the hawk should perch and the eagle with the eagle perch, whatever says the other don't, make his own wing break. That was an interesting allegory. My comrades applauded him and sang, for he is a jolly good fellow once again. This time, the loudspeakers had been switched on and the entire neighborhood rang with song. By the time 4 or 5 High Life records had been played as well, the compound became too small for our audience. Every chair and kitchen stool in the house was brought out and arranged in a half moon for the elders of the village and village dignitaries. A microphone was set up on the steps of the outbuildings facing the crowd. What impressed them right away was how you could talk into the ball and get the voice thundering in a completely different place. Say what you will, I heard someone remark. The white man is a spirit. Max's unprepared speech, or perhaps it was prepared on its broad outlines, was on the whole impressive, but I do not think that it persuaded many people. Actually, it wasn't a speech in the strict sense of dialogue between him and the audience or the vociferous fraction of the audience. There was one man who proved particularly troublesome. He had been a police corporal who had served 2 years in jail for corruptly receiving 10 shillings from a lorry driver. That was the official version, anyway. The man's own story was that he had been framed because he had stood up against his white boss in pre independence days. I believe there was a third version which put the blame on enemies from another tribe. Whatever the true story, on his release, Couple, as the villagers still called him, had come back to his people and become a local counselor and politician. He was at the very moment very much involved in supplying stones to our village pipeline borne water scheme and was widely accused, in whispers, of selling one heap of stones in the morning, carrying it away at night, and selling it again the next day, and repeating the cycle as long as he liked. He was, of course, in league with the local council treasurer. Max began by accusing the outgoing government of all kinds of swindling and corruption. As he gave instance after instance of how some of our leaders who were ash-mouthed paupers 5 years ago had become near millionaires under our very eyes, many in the audience laughed. But in the laughter of resignation to misfortune, no one among them swore vengeance. No one shook with rage or showed any sign of fight. They understood what was being said. They had seen it with their own eyes. But what did anyone expect them to do? Excuse me. The ex-policeman put it very well. We know they are eating, he said, but we are eating too. They are bringing us water, and they promised to bring us electricity. We did not have those things before. This is why we say we are eating too. Defend them, Couple, cried someone in the audience to him. Are you not one of them when it comes to eating aged guinea fowls? This brought a good deal of laughter, but again, it was a slack, resigned laughter. No one seemed ready to follow up the reprimand or join issue with Couple for defending his fellow racketeers. Up to this point, Max had spoken slowly and deliberately, with very little heat. But now, as he accused the present regime of trying to establish itself as a privileged class on the back of the rest of us, his hands and his voice began to shake. Whether it is POP or PAP, they are the same, he cried. The same 10 and 10 pence, agreed someone in English. They want to share out the wealth of the country between them. That is why you must reject both. That is why we have formed the new CPC as a party of ordinary people like ourselves. Once upon a time, a hunter killed some big game at night. He searched for it in vain, and at last he decided to go home and await daylight. At first light of morning, he returned to the forest full of expectation. And what do you think he found? He saw two vultures fighting over what still remained of the carcass. In great anger, he loaded his gun and shot the two dirty, uneatable birds. And you may say that he was foolish to waste his bullet upon them, but I say no. He was angry and he wanted to wipe out the dirty thieves fighting over another man's inheritance. The hunter is yourselves. Yes, you and you and you. And the two vultures, POP and PAP. There was a loud applause. Jolly good, I thought. There were three vultures, the ex-policeman said after the applause subsided. The third and youngest was called CPC. Why don't you leave the young man alone to tell us his story? Asked one elderly woman, smoking a short clay pipe. But many people obviously thought the ex-policeman very witty, and I saw one or two shaking his hand. Toward the end of his speech, Max made one point which frankly I thought unworthy of him or of CPC, but I suppose I am too finicky. We all know, he said, what one dog said to another, he said. He said, if I fall for you this time and you fall for me next time, then I know it's a play, not fight. Last time you elected a member of parliament from Anata. Now it is your turn here in Ura. A goat does not eat into a hen's stomach, no matter how friendly the two may be. Ours is ours, but mine is mine. I present as my party's candidate your own son, Odili Samalu. He walked over to me and held my hand up, and the crowd cheered and cheered. An elderly man, who I believe was also a local councilor, now stood up. He sat on the edge of his seat directly opposite the microphone, his two hands like a climber's grasping his iron staff. His attitude and posture had shown total absorption in what was being said. I want to thank the young man for his beautiful words, he said. Every one of them has entered my ear. I always say what is important nowadays is no longer age or title, but knowledge. This young man clearly has it, and I salute him. There is one word, he said, which entered my ear more than everything else. Not only entered, but built a house there. I don't know whether you others heard it in the same way as I did. The word was that our own son should go and bring our share. There was a great applause from the crowd. That word entered my ear. The village of Anata has already eaten. Now they must make way for us to reach the plate. No man in Ura will give his paper to a stranger when his own son needs it. If the very herb we go to seek in the forest now grows at our very backyard, are we not saved the journey? We are ignorant people and we are like children, but I want to tell our son one thing. He already knows where to go and what to say when he gets there. We should tell him that we are waiting here like a babe cutting its first tooth. Anyone who wants to look at our new tooth should know that his bag should be heavy. Have I spoken well? Yes, answered the crowd as they began to disperse. Later, I called Max aside and told him excitedly in a few words about Chief Nanga's visit. You should have taken the money from him, he replied. What? I was thunderstruck. Chief Coco offered me 1,000 pounds, he continued placidly. I consulted the other boys and we decided to accept it. It paid for the minibus. I don't understand you, Max. Are you telling me that you have taken money and stepped down for POP? I'm telling you nothing of the sort. The paper I signed has no legal force whatever, and we needed the money. It had moral force, I said, downcast. I'm sorry, Max, but I think you have committed a big blunder. I thought we wanted our fight to be clean. You had better look out. They will be even more vicious from now on, and our people will say they have cause. I was really worried. If our people understand nothing else, they know that a man who takes money from another in return for service must render that service or remain vulnerable to that man's just revenge. Neither God nor juju would save him. Oh, forget that. Do you know, Odili, that a British amalgamated has paid out £400,000 to POP to fight this election? Yes. And we also know that the Americas have been even more generous, although we don't have any figures as of yet. Now you tell me how you are supposed to fight such a dirty war without soiling your hands a little. And that's the trick of politics. How are you supposed to fight such a dirty war without getting your hands dirty a little bit? These people are friends. These people are allies. These people go to work with each other every day. I want to say greetings to Anthony McPhail and to the Forecast Radio. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm so glad you're here. So, as you can see, these people don't have any way of fighting this war without getting dirty themselves when they get into the games of politics. Just you tell me. Anyway, we must be moving on to Abaga now. I'll be here again in a couple of days to iron everything out and let you know our detailed plans from now on. Meanwhile, old boy, if the offer comes again, take it. It's as much your money as his. Never. Anyway, the question is purely academic now. Your old man is a wonderful fellow. I like him. Seeing Max and Eunice again, sharing every excitement had made my mouth water, to put it crudely. As Max made his speech, I found myself watching Eunice's beautiful profile. She sat at the edge of her chair, wringing her clasped hands like a nervous schoolgirl. Her lips seemed to be forming the same words that he was uttering. Perhaps it was this delicious picture of feminine loyalty that led me early next day to abandon my carefully worked out strategy and go in search of Edna. I meant to tell her point blank that I was in love with her and let the whole world know about it as well. If she had said no to me because I had not stolen public money and didn't have a Cadillac, well, good. I should go and bear it like a man. But I was determined to not carry on this surreptitious corner love business one day longer. It would be wonderful, I thought, if I could present her to Max on his next visit here. He would be envious, I knew. Edna might not be a lawyer or sophisticated in the nail varnish eyebrow shadow like Eunice, but any man who passed Edna on the road and didn't look back must have a stiff neck. And as far as I was concerned, she was just the right amount. She had just the right amount of education. I had nothing against professional women. In fact, I liked them in their way. But if emancipation meant people like the other lady lawyer who came to sleep with illiterate Chief Nanga for 25 pounds at a time, as he confided to me the next morning, then they could keep it. During the 15-mile journey to Anata, which took the greater part of 40 minutes because of the corrugated laterite surface, I worked out what I was going to say. What was important was not so much what I said, but that I should say it decisively and not like a mumbling schoolboy. If the answer wasn't yes, it would be no, as they say. There are only two things you could do with a yam. If you don't boil it, you roast it. Or perhaps I should preface my declaration with an account of what had been happening to me since we met last. Yes, she would certainly like to hear how her famous suitor came to me in the dark like Nicodemus and offered me 250 pounds. She would like that, and if her greedy father was around, it would make his mouth water into the bargain and raise my standing in his eyes. Then I remembered that last night, as I thought about the offer, I had really been angry again about it at all. Not only about Max disgracing our party and yet having the face to charge me with idealism and naivete, but I couldn't help feeling small at the inevitable comparison of the amounts offered to him and me. Not that it mattered. I would have still refused even if it had been 10,000. The real point, surely, was that Max's action had jeopardized our moral position. Our ability to inspire any kind of terror, which I had seen so clearly in Nanga's eyes, despite all his grandiloquent bluff, and which in the end was our society's only hope of salvation. I clearly saw Edna withdrawing hurriedly from the front room as I drove up. Women, no matter how beautiful they are always trying to be more and usually fail. Though in Edna's case, she was great with face powder and the rest, and great without them. Her younger brother had was alone in the room. He stood up as I came in and said, "Good morning, sir." "Good morning," I said. "What is it you brought me? The letter? Was it you that brought me the letter?" "Yes, sir." "Thank you." "Yes, sir." What is that you are reading?" He held out The Sorrows of Satan. One finger of his left hand still thrust into it, marking the page. I sat down. "Is Edna in?" "No, sir." "What? Who did I see as I came up?" He mumbled something confusedly. "Go and call her." I stood there where he was, looking at the floor. "I said, go and call her," I shouted, rising to my feet. He made no move. "All right," I said. "Edna!" I bawled out loud enough for the entire village to hear. She immediately came hurrying back. "What the hell is all of this?" or words to that effect were on the tip of my tongue, but I wasn't allowed to say them. Edna wore a tightened bow countenance. You couldn't have thought it possible on her face. And her tongue, when she spoke, which was immediately, stung into me like the tail of a scorpion. I recoiled, tongue-tied. Some men have no shame. Can't you go and look for your own woman instead of sneaking around here? My father has told you to stop coming here. And you come to pick up some gossip for your friend Miss Nanga? A big fellow like you should be ashamed of gossiping like a woman. Errand boy, go and tell her I will marry Chief Nanga. Let her come and jump on my back if she can. As for you, why don't you go back to your prostitute woman in Bori instead of wasting your time here? I have been respecting you for the sake of Chief Nanga, but if you make the mistake of coming here again, I will tell you that my name is Edna Odo. She turned to go, stopped again, called me Mr. Gossiper in English, and rushed away. You better go before Dogo comes back. He says he will castrate you. This was from the boy, and it came after I had been standing rooted on the ground for I don't know how long. Dogo? Dogo? Who is he? I thought sluggishly, like a slowed up action film. Oh, yes, Dogo, the one eyed bull. So he was guarding her. Well, well, well. Good luck to them. The first shock, the tightening in the throat, passed very quickly. Certainly by the time I had reversed my car and headed off. In retrospect, my behavior and reactions seemed to have broken all the rules in the book. I should have driven away in a daze, but I didn't. On the contrary, my mind was as clear as daylight. The injustice of Edna's incoherent accusations, most of which I couldn't even remotely relate to myself or anything I knew, did not make me angry. Neither did the terrible thought that Chief Nanga had won the second round. What I felt was sadness, a sadness deep and cool like a well into which my hopes had fallen. My twin hopes of a beautiful life with Edna and of a clean new era and of a new era of cleanliness in the politics of our country. So he had lost two hopes because Chief Nanga probably said something to him, to Edna, about him going back and forth to his wife in order to turn the wife against the marriage. A thought sneaked into my mind and told me it was futile now to try and go through with my political plans, which, in all honesty, I should admit had always been a little nebulous until Edna came along. She had been like a dust particle in the high atmosphere around which the water vapor of my thinking formed its globule of rain. I knew I would not heed the counsel wherever it came from. The knowledge that Chief Nanga had won the first two rounds and on the present showing would win the third and last, far from suggesting thoughts of surrender to my mind, served to harden my resolution. What I had to accomplish became more than another squabble for political office. It rose suddenly to the heights of symbolic action, a shining, monumental gesture untainted by the hopes of success or reward. Chief Nanga moved swiftly, as you would expect, and as you would expect, ruthlessly. I was listening on my new portable transistor radio to the 12 o'clock news on the following Sunday morning. Those days, I did not miss a single news bulletin. If I was likely not to be home at 12, 4, 6, or 10, I took my radio with me. It was a fine Japanese affair, no bigger than a camera, with an earpiece, which meant you could insulate yourself from the noisiest of surroundings. If I was driving somewhere, I could park on the side of the road until the news was over. Excuse me. There were two reasons why I listened so avidly. In the first place, news thirst becomes a craving for every political activist, a kind of occupational disease. Secondly, I wanted to keep a close watch on the antics of our national radio system, which incidentally had not so far said a single word about the existence of our new party, even though we had kept them fully informed of our activities. My Boniface and the others soon developed the same news thirst, only they never did seem able to listen with their ears alone. They must pass their very loud comment at the same time, which was very distracting to me, especially in their their understanding of the news was sketchy and often fantastically distorted. So I began to cut them off by using the ear gadget. Wedding happened in the news, asked puzzled Boniface the first time he played this trick. Radio done spoil, I said. I just dare I just did hear I'm small for my ear now. We must go repair 'em, he said. E no good, make mandi for darkness. So basically, the people that he was surrounding himself with to protect himself had also become interested in the news and they wanted to listen as well. But because they didn't understand the news of the day as it was being regurgitated by the state program, and they were fantastically or they were blowing it out of proportion, he decided that he would listen to it on his earbuds. And they were telling him that he wanted or that he should go get the radio fixed. And he was like, no, it's not going to work. 2 days later, I had relented. I told them that I had repaired the radio myself, which impressed them a lot. The fact was, I had begun to feel mean about cutting my faithful companions from their source of light. But also, I had been missing Boniface, Chiefman, Foolishman, and similar invectives aimed at Chief Nanga and his ministerial colleagues whenever their names came up in the news, which was about every 5 seconds after normal peaceful times, and much more frequently in these critical days. But to return to the Sunday morning, I was listening in the outbuilding with the cynical amusement to which our radio station now had made me accustomed. I no longer had hopes of our latest story ever being used. I had thought that with the telegram I sent them on Friday, they would have been forced into giving us a brief mention. After all, it was the first public appearance of a new party, the CPC, and the tacit support given by my candidature, my village ought not go unrecorded. True enough, my village was only one out of several of the constituency, and their action might not affect the final verdict, but what they had done was news by any definition of the word known to the civilized world. But once more, I listened in vain. Instead, they announced Chief Nanga's inaugural campaign, which had not even taken place. It was to happen on Monday week in Anata. Perhaps I should go and see it. I was dully thinking about this when my father's name coming out of the radio stung me into life. It was announced that Mr. Hezekiah Samalu, chairman of POP in Ura, had been ignominiously removed from his office for subversive anti-party activities, according to an announcement received this morning from the POP Bureau of Investigation and Publicity. I rushed into the main house and broke the news to my father, who was eating pounded yams with pepper soup at his small round table. He swallowed the ball of food in his hand and licked the soup from his fingers. I thought he was going to say something, but he only shrugged his shoulders, drew out his lower lip in a gesture which said eloquently, "Their own palaver, not mine," and continued eating. The next day, however, the palaver came closer to home. The local council tax assessment office brought him a reassessed figure based not only on his own pension of £84 a year, but on the alleged income of £500 derived from business. What business? Everyone asked. But there was no time to explain. In the evening, three local council policemen, like a wee or marijuana smokers, came to arrest him, and in fact proceeded to manhandle him. I had to find £24 fairly smartly. Fortunately, I had just enough CPC money in the house to cover it. I threatened to take the matter up, and the rascals laughed in my face. Nah, only up you go take 'em, asked their leader. If I be you, I go take 'em down too. When I done finish, take 'em up. Turn you back, make I see the Nash. You go fight Nanga. Foolish man, said one of the others as they left. The culmination came at the weekend when 7 public works lorries arrived in the village and began to cart away the pipes they had deposited several months earlier for our projected rural water scheme. This was the first indication we had that the authorities did in fact hear of our little ceremony, which was some consolation. It is a sad truth of our nature that man becomes too easily brutalized by circumstance. The day after the tax incident, I suddenly boiled over. I knew that Edna was still on the edge of my consciousness. I walked up stealthily from behind and pushed her down the precipice out of my mind. I wrote to her. Dear Edna, I said, I wonder whoever put into your head, beautiful empty head, that I want to take you from your precious man. What on earth do you think I would want to do with a girl who has no more education than lower elementary? By all means, marry your ancient man, and if you find that he is not up to it, you can always steal away to his son's bed. Yours truly, Odili Samalu. So he insulted her because he could not have her. Can you imagine that? Being that insulting? Saying that if you go and marry this old man and don't find him to your liking, you'll go sleep with his son? And the final chapter, chapter 13. 2 nights later, we heard the sound of the crier's gong. His message was unusual. In the past, the crier had summoned the village to a meeting to deliberate over a weighty question, or else to some accustomed communal behavior. Our business was to serve notice of something that was to happen. But this night, he did something new. He announced a decision already taken. The elders and the counselors of Ura and the whole people, he said, had decided that in the present political fight raging in the land, they should make it known that they knew one man and one man alone, Chief Nanga. Every man and every woman in Ura and every child and every adult would throw his or her paper for him on the day of the election, as they had done in the past. If there was any other name called in the matter, the elders and counselors of Ura had not heard of it. He said this over and over again with minor changes in detail, like the omission of every child, which I noticed particularly because it had struck me as odd in the first place. Mm. And I thought, if the whole people had taken the decision, why were they now being told of it? In the afternoon, the radio, our local national crier, took up the message, amplified it, and gave it in 4 languages, including English. I listened to it as I had listened to the rustic version, wearing my cynical smile. I couldn't say I blamed my village people for recoiling from the whole of the sacrificial ram. Why should they lose their chance at getting good clean water, their share of the national cake? In fact, they had an adequate justification for their volte-face just 2 days later when the pipes returned. Or at any rate, some of them returned. The rest apparently had been sent irrevocably to the neighboring villages of Ichida, whose inhabitants had also been promised water, but hadn't so far seen any, not even one pipe. So the result of all my exertion had been to give Nanga 1 stone to kill 2 birds with. When I came back with my newspapers the next day, I was told that Counselor Couple had come to see my father with a promise that if he signed a certain document, his recent tax levy would be refunded to him. The document merely sought to disassociate him from his son's lunatic activities. It also said that the so-called lunatic launching of the CPC in his premises was done without his knowledge and consent, and concluded by affirming his implicit confidence in our great and God-fearing leader, Chief Nanga. So they were really twisting his arm and laying it on thick. They were reinventing Nanga in the eyes and minds of the people. I could visualize my father reading it carefully with his now rarely used spectacles, and then putting his glasses aside, telling the fellow to carry his corpse off. And he must have run, so much so that he left the document behind. You made a serious mistake today, I told my father later that day. In your eyes, have I ever done anything else in all my life? I am talking about this paper you refused to sign. He was silent for a while. Then he said, You may be right, but our people have said that a man of worth never gets up to unsay what he said yesterday. I received your friends in my house, and I am not going to deny it. I thought to myself, you do not belong to this age, old man. Men of worth nowadays simply forget what they said yesterday. Then I realized that I had never really been close enough to my father to understand him. I had built up a private picture of him from unconnected scraps of evidence. Was this the same DO's interpreter who made a fortune out of the ignorance of the poor, illiterate villagers and squandered it on drinks and wives? Or had I gotten everything terribly, lopsidedly wrong? Anyway, this was no time to begin a new assessment. It was better left to the tax people. But one thing I must make clear, he said suddenly. You have brought this trouble into my compound, so you should carry it. From today, whatever new tax they decide upon, I will pass the paper to you. That is a small matter, I said, smiling. I did mean that. It was a small matter. I don't know what put it into my head to go to Chief Nanga's inaugural campaign meeting? Did I want to learn some new trick that I could put to use in my own campaign against him? Or was it naked curiosity, the kind that they say earned a monkey a bullet in the forehead? Whatever it was, I went. But I took great pains to disguise myself first with a hat and sunglasses. I thought of taking Boniface and the others, but decided they were likely to attract attention and trouble. So I went alone. I parked my car outside the post office and walked the 300 yards or so to the court premises where the meeting was already in progress. The time on my watch was just a little after 4. Even if I hadn't known my way in Anata, I could still have found the meeting easily enough. The sound of drums and guns beckoned you on, and there were, one moment, and there were hundreds of other people going like me to the place. As I got closer, I could hear a brass band too, no doubt the Anata Central School. I passed many villagers I knew and who should remember also one who was, until recently, a teacher at the grammar school. But they obviously had no clue who I was, which showed how good my disguise was. One such person was Josiah, the renegade trader. Those days he walked like a fowl drenched by rain. I came from behind and overtook him. As soon as I turned into the court premises, my eyes caught Chief Nanga and his party sitting on a high platform solidly built from new timber. Of course, I only noticed details like the timber when I had worked my way through the crowd to a closer position by ruthlessly widening every crack I saw in front of me and squeezing through it, receiving abuses at my back. What I did see right away and what pulled me toward the dice was Edna sitting there on one side of Chief Nanga, as much as she had done on the first day, like a like a convent girl. Miss Nanga sat on the other side of her husband. All the other people on the platform so far were men, but there were still many empty chairs. When I had got to a point in the thick of the crowd from where I could observe the faces on the dais without attracting their attention, I stopped. The dais was surrounded by characters who looked as if they might be able to assist the police in various outstanding investigations. One-Eyed Dogo was among them. Then, of course, there were the placard-carrying Nanga Vanga boys wearing silken green cowboy dresses. I noticed that none of the placards today had my name. I shouldn't have blabbed to Nanga about it. There were also about a half dozen policemen around, just in case, which was unlikely in this friendly crowd. I was choking with the acrid smell of other people's sweat and wondered if the ceremony would ever begin. Chief Nanga sat, smiling and cool in his white robes. His wife looked grandly matriarchal in a blue velvet up and down, fanned herself with one of those delta-shaped Japanese fans, clearly too small and inadequate. Occasionally, she lifted the neck of her blouse in front and blew left and right into her bosom. Edna just sat. At the last ceremony seemed about to be at last the ceremony seemed to be about to begin. Some party official wearing a green POP cap consulted Chief Nanga, who nodded several times, looking at his watch. Then the official grabbed the microphone and began to test it. His shrill voice, amplified 100-fold, startled the crowd and then sent them laughing at their own fright. Something seemed to go wrong because the voice was superseded by one prolonged, ear tearing whistle. All other noises had stopped, and soon the high pitched whistle stopped too. The man counted 1 to 10 and the crowd laughed again. Then he announced that he was the MC. He said that the man before us needed no introduction. Hell, I thought, not again. He was no other than the great honorable Minister Chief Doctor in Advance, M.A. Nanga. I did not listen to the many virtues of Chief Nanga as enumerated by this MC, partly because I knew them very well already, but also because the fellow, having presumably lost his own eardrums long ago, was showing no respect at all to ours. I put my hands over the ears to break the sharp pointed assault, and to pass the time while waiting for Nanga's speech to begin, I began to exercise my fancy. What would happen if I were to push my way to the front and up the palm leaf festooned dais, wrench the microphone from the greasy hands of the blabbering buffoon, and tell the whole people, this vast, contemptible crowd, that the great man they had come to hear with their drums and dancing was an honorable thief? But of course, they already knew that. No single man and woman there that afternoon was a stranger to the news, not even the innocent looking convent girl on the dais. And because they all knew, if I were to march up to the dais now and announce it, they would simply laugh at me and say, "What a fool! Whose son is he? Was he not here when the white men were eating? What did he do about it? Where was he when Chief Nanga fought and drove the white men away? Why is he envious now that the warrior is eating the reward of his courage? If he was Chief Nanga, would he not do much worse?" These questions would not, of course, be spread out in so many words. More likely, they would be compressed into a few sharp blows to the head. As my mind dozed lazily on these fanciful thoughts, I saw Josiah, the outlawed traitor, mount the few steps to the dais and whisper to Chief Nanga, who sprang up immediately, searching the crowd. Josiah had turned round and pointed in my direction. I turned sharply at the same time and began to push blindly through the crowd, panic-stricken, appearing to make no progress whatsoever. Then I heard the loudspeakers call out to the crowd to stop the man wearing the hat and dark glasses. I took off the hat. For a brief moment, nothing happened. I struggled through a few more bodies. Then some tentative hands tried to stop me from behind, but I shook them off and continued to push and shove. I said, "Stop! That thief trying to run away!" screamed the loudspeaker. The hands gained a little resolution, and one vaguely seen body stood firmly in my way. But I was not running anymore. I wanted to know who called me a thief. So I turned around and was pushed forward from three sides to the foot of the dais. Odili the Great, saluted Chief Nanga. Then he took the microphone and said, "My people, this is the boy who wants to take my seat." The announcement was greeted by a wild uproar, compounded by disbelief, shock, and contemptuous laughter. "Come here," said Nanga. "They want to see you." I was pushed up the steps to the dais. I went up and noticed that Edna had covered her face with both hands. "My people," said Nanga again, "this is the boy who is thrusting his finger in my eye. He came to my house in Bori, ate my food, drank my water and my wine, and instead of saying thank you to me, he set about plotting how to drive me out and take over my house." The crowd roared again. My panic had now left me entirely, and in its place, I found a rock cold fearlessness that had never before been felt in my heart. I watched Nanga, microphone in hand, reeling about the dais in drunken jubilation. I seemed to him from a superior, impregnable position. I hear some people asking, "Who is he?" I will tell you. He was once my pupil. I taught him ABC, and I called him to my house to arrange for him to go to England. Yes, I take the blame. He did not just smell his hand one morning and go to my house. I called him. Anyone who wants to may blame me. There were louder cries of shock at such an unspeakable betrayal. He even tried to take a girl on whose head I had put the full bride price and many other expenses, and who, according to our custom, is my wife. This girl here. He went over to Edna and roughly pulled her hands away from her face. He tried to take this girl who is covering her face for shame. Fortunately, my wife caught him and told me. He turned aside from the crowd to me. "Odili the Great, you have come to seek me out again. You are very brave. Or have you come to seek Edna, eh? That's it? Come to the microphone and tell me and my people why you came. They are listening." He thrust the microphone into my face. "I came to tell your people that you are a liar." And he pulled the microphone away smartly, set it down, walked up to me, and slapped my face. Immediately, hands seized my arms, but I am happy that he got one fairly good kick from me. He slapped me again and again. Edna rushed forward, crying, and tried to get between us, but he pushed her aside so violently that she landed on her buttocks on the wooden platform. The roar of the crowd was now like a thick forest all around. By this time, the blows were falling as fast as rain on my head and body, until something heavier than the rest seemed to split my skull. The last thing I remembered was seeing all the policemen turn around and walk quietly away. The events of the next 4 weeks or so have become so widely known in the world at large that there would be little point in my relating them in any detail here. In any case, while those events were happening, I was having a few private problems of my own. My cracked cranium took a little time to mend, to say nothing of the broken arm and countless severe bruises, one of which all but turned me into a kind of genealogical cul-de-sac. I remember the first time I woke up in the hospital and felt my head turbaned like an Aji, like Al-Haji. Everything seemed unreal and larger than life, and I was sure I was dreaming. In the dream, I saw Edna and my father and mother standing around my bed. I also saw, through a gap in the screen, two policemen. But the only thing that was immediate and in focus was the pressure trapped inside the head pounding away in a panic effort to escape. I tried to feel my turban, but but the pain followed my thought to my arm, and I went off again. The next time I looked around me, my father and mama and the policemen were still there, and they looked more solid than last time. Edna had vanished. Perhaps her figure had been planted there in the first place by my fevered fancy. I wondered, in a dull, faraway manner, what the police were doing beside my bed. But I did not wonder too much nor too long. Every other single thing was strange anyway. And two policemen, or four, when they were perhaps changing guards, didn't make much of a difference. Perhaps it was their way of making amends for their desertion when I had needed them. But one morning I woke up to find they had disappeared. Where are they? I asked the nurse who brought my medicine. They're done. They done go. But why? You did ask why? Instead to thank God that they done withdraw your case. My case? I tried hard to remember but couldn't and gave up. My father should be coming any minute now, and he would know. But when he came and I asked him, he refused to tell, saying I should get better first. But I kept at him until he said, yes, I had been under arrest for being found in possession of dangerous weapons. Found? Where? Who found me? In your car. They said 5 machetes were found in your car and 2 double-barreled shotguns. Anyway, they have now withdrawn the case. My thoughts were slowly coming into focus. What day is the election? I don't know. Say you won't tell me, but not that you don't know, I said petulantly. Could I have my radio? Not yet. The doctor says you are to rest. The next day, I asked again, and if only to save himself from pestering my importunity, he said yes. The thugs had ransacked my car, overturned it, and set it on fire. Then, after I had been brought to the hospital, I was placed under arrest, ostensibly for having weapons in my car, but really to prevent me from signing my nomination paper. Nomination paper? But I've already signed it, I said. No, the first one never reached the electoral office. It was seized by thugs from your people on their way to the electoral office. I tried to sit up, but he pressed me back. Not that I could have made it anyway. Now I have told you, don't ask me any more questions. Do you hear? Even in this hospital, you cannot say who is a friend and who is an enemy. That is why I am here so much. He said this quietly and with a backward glance. Max came here in person with a new nomination paper for you, but they turned him back. I see. In fact, it was in fact election day as we spoke. My father found it easy to conceal the fact from me because they had put me in a special isolated ward. That same night, Max was killed in Abaja, but I didn't hear of it either until 2 days later. And then I swept all that day, and the pressure inside my head returned, and I hoped I would die. But the doctor put me to sleep. As I got the story later from Joe, the trade unionist, Max had been informed by our party intelligence that Chief Koku's resourceful wife was leading the women's wing of the POP in an operation that one might describe as breastfeeding the ballot. In other words, smuggling into the polling booths wads of ballot paper concealed in their brassieres. Max immediately investigated, but as soon as he alighted this from his car, one of Chief Coco's jeeps swept up from behind, knocked him over, and killed him on the spot. The police, most of whom turned out to be disguised as party thugs, performed half-hearted motions to arrest the driver of the jeep. But Chief S.I. Coco came forward and told them not to worry. He said he would handle the matter himself. Eunice had been missed by a few inches when Max had been felled. She stood like a stone figure, I was told, for some minutes more. Then she opened her handbag as if to take out a handkerchief, took out a pistol instead, and fired 2 bullets into Chief Coco's chest. Only then did she fall down on Max's body and begin to weep like a woman. When the policemen seized her and dragged her away, a very strange girl, people said. The fighting which broke out that night between Max's bodyguard and Chief Coco's thugs in Abaja struck a match that lit the tinder of discontent in the land. Near home, in Anada Chief Nangas, having been elected unopposed, tried to disband his private army, if only to save himself their keep. But some of them refused to be disbanded and staged a minor battle in which Dogo, the one-eyed bodyguard, lost an ear. Then they went on a rampage, sacking one market after another in the district, seizing women's wares and beating up people. My father's youngest wife lost her entire stock of dried fish in our village during one of the raids and got a swollen face instead. Other election thugs in different parts of the country, hearing of the success of Chief Nanga's people, quickly formed their own bands of marauders, and so a minor reign of terror began. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister had appointed Chief Nanga and the rest of the old cabinet back into office and announced over the radio that he had intended to govern and stamp out subversion and thuggery without quarter or mercy. He assured foreign investors that their money was safe in the country, that his government stood as firm as the Rock of Gibraltar, and its open-door economic policy. This country, he said, has never been more united or more stable than it is today. He nominated Chief Coco's widow to the Senate, and from there made her Minister for the Women Affairs, intending to quiet the powerful guild of boy market women who had become resistive. Some political commentators have said that it was the supreme cynicism of these transactions that inflamed the people and brought down the government. This is sheer poppycock. The people themselves, as we have seen, have become more cynical than their leaders and were apathetic into the bargain. Let them eat was was the people's opinion after all. When white men used to eat, when after all, when white men used to do all the eating, did we commit suicide? Of course not. And there is the all power, and where is the all powerful white man today? He came, he ate, and he went, but we are still around. The important thing is to stay alive. If you do, you still outlive the present annoyance. The great thing, as old people have told us, is reminiscence. And the only thing, and only those who survive can have it. Besides, if you survive, who knows? It may be your turn to eat tomorrow. Your son may bring home your share. No, the people have had nothing to do with the fall of our government. What happened was simply that unruly mobs and private armies, having tasted blood and power during the election, got out of hand and ruined their masters and their employers. And they had no public reason whatsoever for doing it. Let's make no mistake about that. One day, just before I left the hospital, Edna came to see me. We looked at each other without speaking. What could I say about the letter in which I had called her an uneducated girl and said many other cruel things besides? But attack, they say, is the best defense. So I attacked. Congratulations, I said. I will never contest his seat again. I smiled falsely. She said nothing, just stood there. She was staring at me with those round, rock-melting eyes. I am terribly sorry, Edna, I said. I have behaved like an animal. I will always remember that in all that crowd, you were there. You were the only one who tried to help me. My eyes clouded. Don't cry. I said when I looked at her again and found my tears running down her face. Please, my love, don't. Come and sit here. And she did. Edna, I don't know. I feel like a beast, but believe me about that letter. I was so unhappy. You can't imagine how miserable I was. Will you ever forgive me? Forgive you? Forgive you for what? Everything you said in it is true. Oh, please don't talk like that, Edna. I know how you must feel, but please, I didn't mean to, I was so confused and I didn't want to. I didn't want to go into, I didn't want you to go and marry that idiot. That's why I was so, to God, I tried instinctively to seal the oath by touching my lips and pointing to the sky and swearing with my finger, forgetting momentarily that in my confusion that my right arm was in plaster. I was reminded soon enough and changed with my left finger, which felt odd. To marry him? To be frank with you, I did not want to marry him. All the girls in the college were laughing at me. It was only my father. I don't claim to know book, but at least, oh, please, Edna, at least I thank God that I am better than some people with all their minister and everything. He is no better than any Bush Jaguda man with all his money. And what you said about his wife's jealousy, wait a bit. I said something having clicked inside my head and told me to pay attention to what the other party was saying. Wait a bit. Are we talking about my first or second letter? Second. Which second letter? Did you write two? Yes, after I came to see you and then and and then said to myself, don't let up, man. Attack your cover and your defenses. Yes, when I came to see you and you made me so miserable, I wrote, you mean you didn't get it? No, I did not. After you came to see me, it must be one of those the postmaster handed over to him. The postmaster? I don't understand. Oh, you didn't hear? The postmaster and the man are like this. She dovetailed her fingers. He's always passing all my letters to him. No, what a beast. Have you ever seen a thing like that? It was only God that saved me from his hands. God and Odili. Yes, and Odili. What did you say in it? In what? Oh, the other letter. Well, yes, the usual things. Tell me. I will later. Let's talk now about new things now, about our future plans. After a short silence of contemplation, this unbelievable piece of good fortune, I said, what somewhat lightheartedly, a whole cabinet minister prying into a little girl's love letters. Have you ever seen such bad luck? Said Edna. And then something seemed to dawn on her and she asked, but who is a little girl? I smiled and squeezed her hand. She pursued my own thoughts out loud. The inquisitive eye will only blind its own sight, I pronounced. A man who insists on peeping into his neighbor's bedroom, knowing a woman will be there, is only punishing himself. It was then Edna's turn to squeeze my good hand. We heard my father's voice greeting the nurse in the main ward, and Edna quickly got up from my bed and sat on the chair. Ah, my daughter, he said. You have kept away so long, I began to think I had frightened you away. No, sir, she said, embarrassed. Frightened her away? How? I told her I was going to marry her for one of my sons that day she spent the whole night with us here. So it wasn't a dream? What dream? Never mind, Father. What I mean is, you should marry her for this son here. That remains to be seen. After my illness, my father, some of his close relatives, and I went with a big pot of palm wine to Edna's father to start a conversation. The first few visits, we made no headway at all. Our host simply refused to believe that he had lost a chief and minister as son in law and must now settle for this crazy boy who had bought a tortoise and called it a car. But the army obliged us by staging a coup at that point and locking up every member of the government. The rampaging bands of election thugs had caused so much unrest and dislocation in our young army officers that our young army officers seized the opportunity to take over. We were told Chief Nanga was arrested trying to escape by canoe dressed like a fisherman. Thereafter, we made rapid progress with Edna's father, who no doubt saw me as a bird in hand. He told us that Chief Nanga had paid a bride price of 150 pounds for his daughter and another 100 pounds on her education and other incidentals. Was that all? I thought. Our custom, said my father, is to return the bride price finish. Other bits and pieces must be the man's loss. Is that not our custom? Our party said yes, that was the custom, as indeed it was. But I was not interested in the legalistic traditional arguments just now, especially when there were calculated delay a coup might be followed by a counter coup, and then where would we be? And anyway, I did not want to go through life thinking that I owed Nanga money spent on my wife's education. So I agreed to my people's astonishment to pay everything. Let us go outside and whisper together, and my scandalized relations. I said a flat no when they shrugged their acquiescence, astonished at my firmness and pleased because we admire firmness. I had already decided privately to borrow the money from the CPC funds still in my hands. They were not likely to be needed soon, especially with the military regime had just abolished all political parties in the country and announced they would remain abolished until the situation became stabilized once again. They had all They had at the same time announced the impending trial of all public servants who had enriched themselves by defrauding the state. The figure involved was said to be in the order of 15 million pounds. But their most touching gesture, as far as I was concerned, was to release Eunice from jail and pronounce Max a hero of the revolution. For I must point out that my severe criticism of his one fatal error notwithstanding, Max was indeed a hero and martyr. And I proposed to found a school, a new type of school, I hasten to add, in my village to his memory. What I found distasteful, however, was the sudden, unashamed change of front among the very people who had stood by and watched him die. Overnight, everyone began shaking their heads at the excesses of the last regime, at its graft oppression and corrupt government. The newspapers, the radio, the hitherto silent intellectuals and civil servants. Everyone said that what a terrible lot, and it became public opinion the next morning. And these were the same people that only the other day had owned 1,000 names of adulation, whom praise singers followed with song and talking drum wherever they went. Chief Coco, in particular, became a thief and a murderer, while the people who had led him on, in my opinion, the real culprits, took the legendary bath of the hornbill and donned innocence. Coco had taken enough for the owner to see, said my father to me. It was the day I had gone to visit Eunice and was telling him on my return how the girl had showed no interest in anything, including whether she stayed in jail or out of it. My father's words struck me because they were the very same words the villagers of Anata had spoken of Josiah, the abominated traitor. Only in their case, the words had meaning. The owner of the village and the village had a mind. The owner was the village and the village had a mind. It could say no to sacrilege. But in the affairs of the nation, there was no owner. The laws of the village became powerless. Max was avenged not by the people's collective will, but by the solitary woman who loved him. Had his spirit waited for her, for the people to demand redress, it would have been waiting still in the rain and out in the sun. But he was lucky, and I don't mean to shock or to sound clever, for I do honestly believe that in the fat dripping, gummy, eat and let eat regime had just ended, a regime which inspired the common saying that a man could only be sure of what he had put away safely in his gut, or, in the language ever more suited for the times, you chop, me self chop, palaver finish. A regime in which you saw a fellow cursed in the morning for stealing a blind man's stick, and later in the evening saw him again mounting the altar of the new shrine in the presence of all the people to whisper into the ear of the chief celebrant. In such a regime, I say, you died a good death if your life had inspired someone to come forward and shoot your murderer in the chest without asking to be paid. So, as you can see, these people were corrupt, and they had a level of corruption amongst them that said it was acceptable for the chief to steal and to take money and to get fat and eat off of the people and eat off of the land and take kickbacks because they had been abused by the white man for so long. And this is the problem with many colonized people throughout the world. The white man has done these things wrong for so long that they feel that it is acceptable to now take that abuse from their own kind. And that is the end of the book. I hope you enjoyed this reading. I hope you enjoyed the text tonight. But as you can see, colonized people all over the planet think that it is okay to accept some abuse from their own people because the white man has been abusing them for so long. And unchecked power truly does corrupt the people. And we have to remember that there must always be a balance, a rectification point, a place where we say this and no farther. Because if we don't do that within ourselves and within our own community, then the response to the injustice will be so great, like in the story where the military overtook the people and beat up women and stole and raided their markets. And then the military regime took over and said, until this place can be stabilized, we're going to be in control. So if we don't rein in our political figures and political actors, our storytellers, those people that we trust to go and take our story and acquire resources on our behalf, if we don't rein them in, then a greater reaction will happen. And they will be reined in by a larger apparatus, right? And that larger apparatus will put them in check. It may kill them. It may incarcerate them. It may put them in a place where they don't want to be. All right, I want to thank the Forecast and Anthony McPhail for listening. I know that Sister Raw and the elders are listening. I know that Bwana Hadbuziki is listening. I know that Koku from the Bitter Medicine Podcast is listening. And you, yes, you, dear listener, you too are listening. I will be back on Thursday, and we're going to start Immiserable Slavery, which is talking about Thistlewood and the different things that he did. It is a an accumulation of his different diaries and the different perspectives on his diaries, where he talked about the things that he did to the enslaved population. That's what makes his diaries so unique. It's not that he did it, it's that he documented it without any type of shame or anything. So we'll be reading that next. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Peace.